Welcome back. This is K24 This Morning, looking at the big stories of the day when the final leg of it. Of course, you can tweet us at K24TV. Looking at some of those tweets right now, Mutori saying, a very good morning. What will happen to the judiciary as it seems like it's crippled? Who's fighting CJ Maraga? Is this we shall revisit at work, quote unquote? That's a question he's posing to the panel. Kennedy Omogi saying, stop blaming Parliament, for we all know Jubilee captured Parliament and at no single time did its members vote independently. That being brought out right there to the fore. Let's look at another tweet coming in real quick. Kennedy Omogi asking, why is the judiciary getting less than 1% of the allocation? Why would the office of the president get more than the judiciary? Of course, all of this stemming from the press conference that was held by CJ Maraga, discussing very many issues, touched on budgetary issues, but also spoke to almost what seemed like a lack of goodwill between executive and the judiciary, because I'm sure there are proper channels to vent such frustrations instead of going to a presser by himself to speak on the status of what he feels are very many, indignities brought against him and his stature also as, President of the Supreme Court at the time. Let me bring in Dennis on this very quickly before you look at matters centers, because it's an issue that is still up for debate. People wondering how the president will respond to this or how we move from here, because as you can see, the CJ was not pleased at all as he spoke from the foot of the court that particular morning. What is going on here? Because it almost feels like once he has accused CSs of trying to get him out of office, people within the office of the president, there's a lot of friction between the executive and the judiciary. Has he been revisited now?
I think I want to look at the press conference that the CJ held at two levels. One, the CJ as a person and the office of the CJ. David Maraga, the Chief Justice, is not a politician. And if he tried to be a politician, he will make a very poor one, if you ask me. If you follow how he has been doing things, we one time as lawyers, sometime in February this year, we complained heavily when we saw the Chief Justice standing on the roadside in Kisii and the parade was passing, and we asked, you are the President of the Supreme Court and you are the head of the judiciary. How do you find yourself in the street clubbing for a president? Why do you bring the office of the Chief Justice? And I think he was misled to believe that he could have gone to an event and they never worked through the logistics of evacuating him so that he protects that office. That's why I call him a poor politician. He went to a political setup where he's not good at all. Our view is that attempt was trying to reach out for the political goodwill. And at one point we tried to see him trying to be close to the president and those events. He mellowed down a bit. And I think he was trying to do what anybody could say, that, okay, it's political goodwill, let us reach out, let's see if we can work and resolve the issues. That has not worked for the office of the Chief Justice or for him. So when you see him on the press conference in the manner that he presented, I have read that statement, other than what has been pulled out and is being presented by the media. It raises very fundamental issues. It raises issues that touch on the independence of the judiciary and the things that need not to be done. Of course, as a person, there are things that demean you. If you are a leader of his caliber and stature, you go to a public function, and as a person, you feel really you are not even needed there. There was no reason for you to come. It's normal for him as a person to feel irritated. And for him to have come to the press, I think he has reached the ultimate,
when he went down that road.
Yes, he's reached the final stage. He feels the late Kenyans know this and debate it. I've not seen anybody really blame him so heavily for doing what he did. And we really need to recheck, because it appears that the executive, which is more political, seems to have its way. And that is why there's need for the judiciary to be left as independent as it ought to be. Because if we don't do that, then we are going to let Kenyans start sorting their problems differently. Now we have a challenge in terms of even functionalities, how the judiciary is able to operate even within the country. We have courts that have been closed. What does it mean to a litigant who has been waiting for a matter at the Court of Appeal in Nyeri to be determined? Now they'll be told, I was in court in Kisii and I was given a date for hearing next year, June, on a matter. What happens with these people? They can't get their dispute. Even in June, I don't know whether the judge will be there or will be sick. So when we go to June, that's the next time I'll appear in court. Then you are told, look, the judge can't be available. So what next? You take a date in 2021. You went to court because you wanted a solution. Now you can't find that solution because the courts they're not sufficiently facilitate to be present.
And even as you look at that, because there are also very serious allegations he made, because when the president of the Supreme Court is saying that there are CSAs who want him out, PSAs who want him out, people from the office of the presidency who are trying to get him out of office. That's as serious as an allegation as it gets in terms of the rule of law and justice in the country. How should this be addressed moving forward? Because some people are saying that this wasn't the proper form, he should have used an alternative channel. But if the CJ has gone this way, how should the executive and, of course, the president who was called into this by virtue of him being the head of that particular office respond to this? How do they move forward?
It's a tricky situation for two reasons. Because one, the holder of a very, very high office, judicial office, has taken to the media to complain about what he sees as, etiquette indignities, this and that. He says he go to State House, he's made to wait, junior fellows going ahead of him. He does raise serious and fundamental issues, even about the administration of justice in general. Because, for instance, if you say the judiciary is going to have less money than it's been having or than their proposed budget, you take a case like Mombasa, Malindi. The Court of Appeal has been oscillating between those two places. Now, you slash the budget, the Court of Appeal sits in Mombasa. Guys in Malindi, how do they access justice? I'm using this to illustrate how serious the issues he's raising are. That's one. Two, when he says there are fellows out to get him, the general public, or those who know that he has security of tenure, we begin to ask, what happened to it? Is there a gray area somewhere? Is there something we're missing? But three, most importantly, he has raised very, very serious issues, and there are issues that are not going to go away until they're addressed. If they are genuine, then there ought to be serious consultations, right, I think, between him and the office of the president. Right. Because the matter is now in the public. The perception is he is being hounded out of office. That perception has to be dispensed with, right, before we can move forward and have the faith and confidence that we need to have in the judiciary as a whole and in the administration of justice in particular.
Honorable Kioni, this is something that Thumbi had raised. One of the viewers has also raised it, and I want to bring it to you. Is this the revisit that was once spoken about, in the sense that he, I'm sure, has a direct line to the office of the president where he would have discussed this, but going to the media, is this the revisit everybody thinking has come to roost?
I think if it's a revisit, then even Parliament has been revisited.
But you haven't seen the Speaker Muturi going to the press yet. So clearly it doesn't seem like the revisit got there.
Because for the reason that Muturi being a politician, he is able to I think you can see the politician in Muturi. It's in this place. And like what Anyona is saying, even holding those offices requires some political shrewdness.
When he spoke about the fact that you shouldn't cry like babies on that one, there are other
I don't know whether
it's
it's in the Star, but he is there. He's there very clearly
on page 4 of the people.
Why MPs have come to the rescue of or something. I don't know. But one is that moving my mind away from the issue of revisit. In any case, if it's a revisit, it could be also late. We are headed to the end of this. We are now on the 3rd year. You can't revisit when it's so late. Two is that if it's a question of removal of the president of the CJ, as mentioned by Wachira, you need a constitution. There's a constitutional procedure to deal with it, and it's not a small thing. It's not a thing you can do overnight. A tribunal will take us another 2-3 years. Enough time. Where, in fact, the time that he has in office is not enough for us to go through a tribunal process. He is retiring within this. I thought. So I don't think that I will be moving myself from, if it's somebody who wants him out of office, other than by virtue of that his term is coming to an end because he will be retiring, must be a very unwise thing. I think the issues are different, are elsewhere. Very deep though, and the issue is that one is we have a problem of protocol in this country. It's very annoying to see the CJ go and junior officers get in to see the president ahead of him, and he has a whole arm of government that is reading. They need to deal with him. And again, I'm sure he doesn't just walk to State House. You would ideally have been told, come at this time. So there is an issue of protocol, and it's an issue that also came up. Somebody mentioned it yesterday. We had some individuals who had We had some 3-4 members of parliament who had been invited to Germany the other day, and they said one of the things that is clear in German is protocol. They know who is at what rank. There is a problem in this country. The protocol thing that was done by SRC, Salaries and Remuneration Commission, some 3-4 years, was really hoopwash. It really murdered things. But the other issue is that, and that will need to be sorted out. The other thing is that during the constitution making process, I think we also splintered the courts too much. Said we have an environmental and land issue, you have family court, you have civil court, you have criminal court, we have labor, and then a judge sitting labor cannot be allowed to sit over criminal matters. That is already a problem, because some of them now, truth be said, they are idle, because you may have sorted out the issues of labor, but the judge with the criminal division has files this side. We should allow them to be, in any case when you go to school, you are taught to deal with all these matters. So I think it is important that we look at that issue and allow judges to look at that.
Okay.
The other one is on the issue of the FAD. CS, the attorney, completely went out of his way. Certainly maybe because of the mess that he may have found in the ministry, including that the projections, like you said, were not accurate. But he sent a circular out to say that every other person must get into the austerity area. A good thing that we must support as a country, but he must do it constitutionally. He has no mandate to slash the budget of judiciary.
Right.
He has no mandate to slash the budget of parliament. He can reorganize budgets within his ministry, but he cannot even move money from one vote to the other. You can tell them to spend less in a vote. If he needs to reorganize votes, he must come back to parliament. That is why he has a date with the budget committee, I think, this week. And he has also a date with the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee to say, why is he sending out letters, circulars, memos that are completely unconstitutional? Okay. And there is another thing that the CS, Treasury have, or the executive have not done. The Constitution requires the establishment of a judicial fund, where after we've done the budget, the money for judiciary is sent to that fund, so that you don't even control the way they spend the money. Equally, there is need, and this is why this is a part of the amendments that we are also asking. Right. These arms of government require a fund that they can operate independently. If you have no financial autonomy, you cannot quite say that you are independent. And we can actually see it happening now to the judiciary. It's only that the judiciary has come out this clearly. But it's also the thing that has been done on parliament. The same things happening within the judiciary are the same things happening within parliament. But we are telling the attorney, you can, that's okay, we understand, we need to cut down our expenditure. But that's not the way to do it. Bring the issue back to parliament, let us have a budget, a supplementary budget, let Kenyans know of these debates, so that we are all part of it, but not the way it is being done. Okay,
because of time, we'll have to move quickly forward. Before we wind up and talk about this very touchy issue, matters census. If you look at page 6 of the People Daily, Mount Kenya leaders demand new count. Governors Kiraito, Muthomi claim population figures in their counties were cooked, quote unquote, to shortchange the region politically and economically. And of course, they have said, if you look at the front page of the PD, they vow to go to court. If they'll have a court date and hearing is another thing, because as you can see already, a very strained court system as of now. But as they talk about the fact that they want a fresh census, how plausible is this and how do you address this issue? Because they're not the only ones. We had Governor Robert talking about this as well, MP Honorable Ahome as well, pointing about the fact that in terms of the numbers that have been given out, some of them feel that these were not the numbers they should have gotten as well. How do they address this? Because they're saying it now goes to the matters judicial system.
Yeah, I believe this is one of the most critical exercises ever. And even though census is a tool that looks at sharing the national resources in an equitable manner, census is also a political tool that is used to mass and to map many other things. We are in a season that everyone has to be very careful because of one particular thing that is being called the BBI. And I'll bring this into four. The truth of the matter is that BBI will propose a parliamentary system. And then if you look at a parliamentary system...
But Dennis, how do you know that? It hasn't been tabled yet.
It hasn't been tabled yet, but if it hasn't been tabled yet, there has been discussions of the same. Adan Duale has spoken about this. Everybody has spoken about this. Whether or not the contents that is written on paper is in people's minds and in their mouths. It is not the piece of paper that speaks. People write down their thoughts and their submissions. This newspaper, people thought of it first before they wrote it. So whether the report comes or not, the minds of men have spoken through their own mouths. So a parliamentary system works through regional representation. Numbers and members of parliaments, the horde and the number that comes there, then will be the size of power and the size of negotiable power or representation that then may decide who rules or who doesn't. And that's the reason why these politicians are looking at it and saying, wait a minute, if this thing will ever pass, then we don't have a strong representation. Then we may get into an issue. So I think all this, it's absolutely critical to look at the numbers. And there's a conversation on whether the last census was honest or not, because there are critical disparities. If you look at an area like Mandera, it says that almost 157,000 people died, that they didn't give birth to any babies, there was no progress whatsoever. So there's nothing wrong in asking these critical questions based on where the country is going to, based on the political discussions, based on perceived, if you may, discussions around the BBI, based on whether the system of government will change or thereabout. These are absolutely very fundamental questions that the politicians must ask. Okay. And I believe that these results will be challenged in the judicial systems very soon.
And that's what I talk about and bring in Anyoka on this as well, because if indeed they go the court route and decide to take this to court, are we envisaging a scenario where the court might ask for a fresh census being done?
I don't see that happening because of the public interest in terms of the resources that have been spent, the logistics, the planning. That money has already been paid out, the work has been done. But I think politicians are not being very honest with this debate. When you see counties, numbers have gone up, others have gone down. I had occasion to listen to an official in one of the media houses from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics who said the report that you see depends on where people were found on the 2 nights when it was being done. Now, if your county appears that people are not there, it only means that they are migrated. That it does not mean that the numbers have not gone up. It only means that people don't live there any longer. There are various dynamics we need to look at. So I think that is the reality. Now, you need to appreciate that we have the current constitution has provided for devolution, and we have counties. Counties as units of administration have affected how people are relating. We've seen counties like Kajiado, everybody's buying land in those sites and building there. So it's no more if on a night of the census I live in Kajiado, they'll find me in my house in Kajiado, and the numbers in Kajiado will look to have gone up. If more counties, including my own county in Nyamira, people have moved out of the county, you'll find Kisii County is a greater beneficiary of the devolution than Nyamira County. Why? Because there are poor resources, poor services in my county in Nyamira, and therefore people tended to buy land in Kisii, build there, and shift there. So if census was to be done on a given night, I could be a resident of Nyamira, but I actually live in a different county. So these are really not, complex issues to understand. Politicians going to court, I do not know how they will justify what the error was.
Right.
How you will be able to prove that first you have justiciable cause, what you call it in law. Do you have really a legal argument?
It's a difficult case for them.
It's a difficult case. It's almost impossible. I think for me, these are media theatrics by politicians to get some level of recognition and mileage.
It's interesting because one former Senator, Bill Okero, talking about the fact that how that data was stored, how it was transmitted, very opaque, and he wants more transparency as to how this was tabulated right before it was given, of course, to the office of the president to be given out. He has problems with that and the integrity of the data that was captured therein. Some people, as you have heard, talking about the BBI on this particular issue. How do you move forward on this particular one? Because some people saying that this was out to marginalize some communities in this particular area. Is it just playing to the public gallery right now, Mr. Wachira?
I think it is. Because for one thing, politicians will always talk. Because I think we pay them to talk. That's one. Two, Our judicial systems, our courts of law, they place a very, very heavy premium on evidence and precedents. Like Wakili said, I don't see it happening because one, there's no precedence. Two, gathering evidence for this sort of thing, proving that, we were not properly counted, is going to be not just an uphill task, it's very, very impossible.
Right.
So they may make noise, they will play to the gallery. If they want, they can go to court. My take is they will go nowhere. The cases will go nowhere.
Right.
And we shall be back to listening to them again like we've done over time.
Over an Honorable Kioni, let's talk about the people of Naragwa.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with how it was carried out and the numbers that you got?
One of the things that we need to note is that the president was very quick. I don't know whether he was quick, but he actually released the census to the public and instructed all government agencies to start using the new census. So even as you contemplate going to court, know that they are already now in use. And any court will have to issue an injunction stopping the government from using this census. And you can actually see that if you are going to court, you're almost fighting a losing battle. I have a reason to complain. For 10 years, I think 2009, Daragwa, we were 92,000. And we have done so much work. We have only grown by 6,000. So we are now at 98 after 10 years. It's very difficult to believe what that means. But even with the 6,000, 2,000 people actually came into Daragwa through the IDP program. So it's like we gave birth to only 4,000 babies for 10 years. I tell you, it's something that is very difficult to allow into your mind. But one of the things that is clear is that there is an area in Daragwa that is not habited. Because it is dry, it's very difficult. For us to attract population to that area, we must invest. Make it possible for people to do farming, for people to invest in that area. We must have incentives into that area. And I use Daragwa as an example to the reasons why. Before, we would see people trying to chase people from their constituencies, from their counties, go back to where you came from. If you now want to share in the government resources, in the national cake, you will need to attract more people to your area. So that's one of the positive things that I think we need to check. But it's, without doubt, we need to know that this is also the first time that we have used the biometric voter. It's a fair, using all the principles that have been given to us by the UN, we used them. And it gave us all this, the data that we have. And without doubt, I expect people to go to court. I'm also going to be issuing a press conference after this, saying that I'm not happy about what I have seen in Daragwa and Nyandarua, because our numbers have not grown. We eat a lot of potatoes, and we thought we are more productive than this. And we need, but it is also, we have to be very careful not to lose this debate. To say that these are politically instigated figures already is a thing that you can tell somebody is addressing another issue in the coming days. The issue is, how did we arrive at these numbers? Kenya National Bureau of Statistics must come out and tell us more. They need to share, to give us more information, to convince us more. The data is out there, but they need to buy us into this document as to what has happened. The issue of parliamentary system, I just want to weigh on it kidogo because my colleague has mentioned it. We again must be very careful about this. Because as it is now, the system we have of presidential system is not serving us well at all. And I can tell you, I served in both. The other one was more responsive. You had an issue in Daragwa, I would get the minister on the floor, I would pin him on the floor, you give an undertaking and what he needs to do, it is done in the coming week. Today, you have an issue, you go to the ministries, and you'll be treated like a maraga. You see people you don't know exactly what they have gone to discuss with the CS, they will just keep passing. And after a while, you just give up and go back. So the executive has completely cut itself from the system. And one of the quick ways in our thinking is that we need to have cabinet members back in
on
Parliament.
The floor of the House.
Now, having it the old way is already parliamentary. There is another mind of a parliamentary system where you elect leaders from the floor. So if we are not careful, we will poison Kenyans' mind by saying parliamentary, you need numbers, you blah, blah, blah. So they will reject something that has served us well because there is a fear of another one. We need to be very, very clear on this and deal with it. But let me say this as a final thing. There are no numbers in any community that will give you adequate seats in parliament for you to elect, be it a prime minister, leader of government, or majority leader. There is no one tribe that can muster enough parliamentary seats to determine who becomes a leader on the floor without working with others. I'll give an example of the community that I come from. We are now about 50. Even if we are given another 30, which is an impossibility, you will get to 80. You still have 290. You have another 210 people. You will need to have people to work as a team. You will need to have to work as a country. So this thinking of just a small team that you can be, you can function alone, it's not going to work. Okay. So we need to go outside that and embrace more. But we must make sure that I want to say that I believe that a parliamentary system is a better thing for this country. As to what form of parliamentary system, that's a debate we must have because there are very many types of parliamentary systems. Even as but I hope you have noticed that Garissa has grown. Yes. It has grown and Duare must be very happy. But also know why is it growing? Because Garissa town has attracted very many investors. Okay. So you don't want to say from where, but there are very many people who are in Garissa now. They have helped Garissa County.
But also refugees who have what ideas.
Yes. We shall discuss that because that's a totally different discussion. Thumbi, we have 30 seconds each as we wrap up our parting shots. I'll start with you, Thumbi. What's your parting shot this morning?
I think my parting shot is, even though with the lifting of the capping, I'd ask Parliament really to look into this matter from a long-term perspective, work on the risk model or risk-sharing model so that the banks are not averse to working with SMEs. Just make sure that there's a way that the SME sector, which contributes to, I think, about plus 50% of our GDP, to make sure that you lift that risk aspect and that banks really can invest. I think currently they're working with only about 20% of the SMEs, expand it to 80. So that then we can have that stability. Okay. And also, I will ask Honorable Kioni, please, Kenyans are being auctioned daily and the obituaries have increased. Why? Because of late payments from government. The same businessmen are supplying services but are not being paid. So they have also increased the non-performing loans.
Thank you very much,
so
Dennis.
So kindly look at those critical matters.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Because I know Dennis can go on and on that. Anyoka, please, your parting shot, 30 seconds.
Let the census 2019 inform the way leaders do their things. They need to give incentives to their own regions to attract people to move there, so that then they do not complain of manipulation, because there are areas that are clearly grown, like Garissa, as we have had, and it's because we have now a few infrastructural things in place, like there's a university there now, people want to go there to work and all those kind of things. So let leaders not be crying and talking about going to court. That is their right to go to court if they so wish to do and if they feel they have a good cause. But let this become a wake-up call to really give incentives for various regions to be attractive so that people can move there.
Okay. Patrick Wachira, your parting shot this morning.
I feel we have spent a lot of money on the census. It's critical that the census results inform policy, so that if we are talking about, for instance, a multi-layered leadership approach and layers of leadership, we can work towards eliminating that. Two, I think it's important that the political class, and by extension maybe the executive, refrains from using the census results for political gains. For instance, numbers required for a constituency to exist, they were ignored 10 years ago. About 27 constituencies were allowed to stay, despite not having the numbers required. This shouldn't be the case. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Honorable Kioni, your parting shot as
well. That we are not going to lose 40 constituencies. Only boundaries will be altered. And if they are altered to the extent that yours is swallowed by others, we have not lost it to emerge in another region. So there are no constituencies that are being scrapped, only that you may not see what the constituencies are. But counties that have fewer people than the number of constituencies they can sustain must allow those constituencies to move on to other counties. I have heard the issue of auction is true, but we passed a law and required the government to pay debts or figures that fall due within a month, within 60 days latest. We try and make sure that the law operates. One of the other reasons why the debt ceiling had to go up is because Shyrox are the ones who have killed many of our businesses. They just come and cross you, auction you very quickly, and we needed to deal with that issue. That was one of the things that was also very scary.
Okay.
But we also needed to get some money to pay these debts. And I'm talking like I'm in government, I'm not. But there was need to get some debt so that the people who are owed money by government are also paid. Okay. That way you allow circulation in there.
Okay, Honorable Ken, you have to leave it at that as far as the newspaper review is concerned. Quite a heated debate this morning. I want to thank NNthumbi for making time this morning, political and governance expert, advocate of the High Court, Dennis Anyoka. Thank you so much for making time. Patrick Wachira, our special projects editor from the People Daily, and Daragwa MP and chair of the CIOC, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. Thank you so much for making time for this debate this morning. The conversation continues online at K24 TV. We take a short break, back on the other side as we get interactive.